Enforcement Academy and other aspects of things that I do out here. So, oh no, you're fine. My goal is to help you succeed, as well as Delta's goal and Michelle's goal here. If you're afraid to ask me a question today, shame on you. I've seen it, I've done it, I've been in this. I'm 2 months shy of 37 years in law enforcement and corrections. Was it hard for me to hang it up? Yes, absolutely. It's difficult for me to not participate in a lot of this activity with task force and everything else, and it's tough to hang it up. But at some point in time, you have to. I'm getting older, I'm getting chubbier. But I've earned that. After almost 37 years, I've earned it. My wife's upset I'm retired. She's not. She's upset about that, but I've earned it. And if you're truly considering a position in criminal justice, whether it be corrections or law enforcement, set your goals. If you have no goals when you go into this job, you have nothing to strive for, nothing to achieve. Those are employees that I do not look for. I've sat on numerous oral boards for promotions, hiring boards, not just for the agencies that I've worked with, but for other agencies as well. We look for leaders. We look for achievers. The old days in corrections when they called them turnkeys, no. No, it's more of a profession now. It's more professional. So, and I tell you, just to give you a brief history about myself, I retired from the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office. I started part-time in corrections to go in and do church services in the jail, to monitor and supervise church sessions. $5 an hour is what I made. And that was back in September of 1983. And that's how I got my start. So from there, I was hired full-time into corrections in 1987. I attended the police academy out here at Delta in the same year. And back then, we had to work our 40 hours and go to school 40 hours. How bad did I want it? Again, set your goals, set your achievements. So I worked a couple years in corrections. Then I was promoted to the streets as a patrol deputy. 1993, I was promoted to patrol sergeant. 1994, I was promoted to administrative patrol sergeant. God, I tell you, it's going back. Maybe I should have wrote this down.
What was 93? 83 again, right?
83 is when I started part-time in corrections. Whenever you get a chance, whether it be part-time, full-time, take the opportunity if it's something you really want. If you go into a part-time and you wake up and realize, ooh, this is something I may not want to do, you can always get out. But I encourage each and every one of you, if you are thinking about corrections, tour your local facility. Get a chance to talk to the officers. Investigate and do what you can do to find out what you're getting into. I have the utmost, highest respect for corrections officers on what they have to deal with every day. I've done both, so I can relate to both. I've had a fantastic career. I'll never take anything away from my career. I've been very blessed. So, to continue, 1994 Administrative Sergeant, 2001, I was promoted to the jail as the commander of the jail, Saginaw County. Maximum capacity to Saginaw County Jail at that time was 513. And we housed the worst of the worst. Was 2009, I was promoted to Captain Operations Commander, which means I oversaw the jail and the patrol division of the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office. And ultimately, I retired out January of 2013 as an operations commander. I was number 3 in charge at the Sheriff's Office. So not too shabby for starting part-time working church services in the jail. But you have to want it. You have to set your goals. You have to earn it. Nothing was ever given to me. You know, and that's one thing nobody could ever take away from me. During my tenure with the Sheriff's Office, I was blessed to go to the FBI National Academy. Only 3% of law enforcement worldwide are accepted to the FBI National Academy. Only 3%. So I was blessed, I was accepted, and I completed 10 weeks in Quantico, which involved 19 credit hours of study classes, plus PT, plus extracurricular activity outside of the academy. I was in a leadership challenge course where we had to, myself and my partner, had to go out and we had to put together a silent auction to benefit a local charity. And dating back then, it was one of the largest that was ever done in the history of the academy. We did such a great job, my partner and I. But we had to go out and we had to solicit a lot of things from community. So I could probably sell you anything, and you wouldn't need it, I could sell it to you. So I was very, very blessed and fortunate to go to the academy. I had a network of individuals that I could contact across the world. There were 262 people in my class from all over the world. So that opportunity is out there. Agencies try to send officers. They have 4 classes a year. And to get in is very, very difficult, but it can be done. How bad do you want it? Once you get that under your belt, like I say, you have opportunities that you would not believe once you have that training. I was also allowed to train with the Secret Service in D.C. for a week. Their academy is supposed to be hush-hush. Nobody's supposed to know where it's at. But I was trained in dignitary protection. You know, we had a lot of candidates, presidential candidates, come into Saginaw County, Midland County, and Bay counties, and I assisted with numerous diplomatic security procedures and headed up security for those that came into MBS Airport. So again, I've been very, very fortunate in my career, very blessed. So put in a lot of time. As a command officer for the Sheriff's Office for 12 years, I was on call 24/7 for 12 years. So even on vacations, I had to have my phone, and back then we had pagers. Yes.
Can you explain like what it was like when you went into the FBI? Because that's what I want to do. So I kind of want to know your experiences and what you.
The experiences I had at the FBI Academy, if anybody in the back didn't hear that, I'm going to tell you, to pull into that parking lot in Quantico after you go through your checkpoint, unbelievable. You know, our class was participating in our training at the same time that they were doing a recruit school. And their criminal behavior wing, how many of you watch CSI or Criminal Minds? I'm going to tell you, unbelievable. And Hannibal Lecter, Jodie Foster, remember her running through the woods? Anybody see that movie? If you haven't watched it, I ran through the same woods. That was part of our PT. So, yeah, you got to watch it. It's a great movie. But, you know, they depict Quantico, and everything that they show there was done right at Quantico. And to walk in there, to walk into their Hall of Justice, to see the fallen officers' plaques on the walls that they have lost, it's an honor. It's truly an honor. And I graduated 3 days before 9/11. My sheriff and undersheriff were trapped on the tarmac flying out when the Pentagon was hit. They were on the tarmac ready to take off, and the airline had to turn around and go back to the terminal. And they were stranded there for a week. Nothing was allowed to leave that area. Because they were there for my graduation ceremonies. And they were stranded. Yes?
I wonder if you could clarify a point for the students. You weren't in the FBI.
No.
It's a special program that allows law enforcement officers.
Correct.
I'll let you explain it.
It's a leadership course. If your organization feels that you are the up-and-coming leaders of that organization, they have the ability to send you to this course, which is a 10-week course at Quantico. You stay there. It's like a dorm. You know, I had a roommate, and our suite mates, there's 4 of us that shared one bathroom. And it's just like you're living in a dorm. And you go to classes every day, you eat your meals there every day, and you know, you partake in some events. I went when I was 43 years old. You know, I hadn't been to college since I was 18. So it was kind of difficult for me, especially when you're talking about term papers and everything else. And I took it so serious that I missed out on a lot of opportunities. You know, the group from New York that were there, my classmates put on a New York trip. Had I taken advantage of that, I would have been able to see the Twin Towers for the last time. But I didn't. I stayed in my dorm room and was getting my term papers done instead of going out and networking with my fellow students. That was my fault. You know, but I took my classwork very, very serious. And, you know, I had a media class. They have their own TV station in Quantico. And we had to put on speeches, press releases, in front of our peers. That was part of my media class. Believe me, I didn't choose that. My sheriff and undersheriff chose that for me. So for 10 weeks, we had to get up, we had to prepare speeches, get up, and we had to be evaluated. Plus, we were shown our speeches on tape. So we had to do self-evaluation on ourselves. But that instructor at that point in time never, according to him, gave anyone an A. I walked out of there with an A+ for that class. It was unheard of with that instructor, so I was very proud of that. But this is how intense this course is. And, you know, you can take it lightly. You can go out and party all the time like some of the class did, or you can knuckle down. Yes, sir?
My aunt's slotted to go to that class in the next, whatever the next session is this year, and she's close to retirement, but she's extending her retirement out just so she can go to it.
It's unbelievable. You know, congratulations to her, because it's very, very difficult to get into. The background, I've never been through such a more thorough background or a physical. You know, and I used to be in great shape. I mean, they take out the fat tongs and they put them on you. And if you exceed your specifications for your height, you're not accepted. And we ran every day and did all kinds of PT every day. The ultimate goal was a 9.3 mile run that we had to do if we wanted to achieve what they called your yellow brick. And it's not just running on a track. You run through the woods. 3.2 miles of that was the marine obstacle course that we had to complete, of that 9.3. So to walk out of there with the yellow brick means a lot. So no, it's training for those that are going to be up and coming leaders of the organization.
How many do they take a year? Do you know?
4 classes, and normally the classes are, if they can fill it, are about 260, 270. But from all over the world. We had this guy from Syria. I never will forget it. He was on a counter-terrorist assassination team. Yeah, he was in with the, because you don't know who you're going to be dorming with. But I was real close friends with his room partner that was his room partner for 3 days. He woke up one night, the guy was standing over top of him, and he looked at my buddy and said, "You snore, I kill." He chose to stay at a hotel for the entire rest of his stay in Quantico. That's just the way they do things there. So, but it's a great experience. Fantastic. If any of you get an opportunity or show interest in that, I highly advise it. It is unbelievable. And the Secret Service training, I was floored. I mean, we were taken down into a museum the Secret Service has at the academy there, and I got to see the gun that was used to kill John F. Kennedy and other items of interest that were in their little museum down there. But they actually have an airline's fuselage right there in the training facility, so they can train on the airlines. They have an actual city that's built, similar to what Hogan's Alley is at the FBI Academy. And one day we showed up at the city for training, and they gave us helmets and gave us guns, and they said, "You're going to be protecting the limousine today, the presidential limousine, from assailants." Everybody see the black Suburbans that are in the motorcades? You ever wonder what's in those? They call them CAT teams, counter assault teams. Usually 5 people in the Suburbans. If the limousine comes under attack, what do you think their job is? It's literally suicide. But you basically have to attack the attackers. You get out of that Suburban, and you're laying down rounds as you're advancing towards the assailants. That's your job. So on that particular day, I had my turn in the black SUV, and we're going up against simunitions. Anybody know what simunitions? Yeah, they hurt. They're paint rounds. Not a paintball. These are hard plastic tip bullets with paint in them. And when they hit you, they hurt. And then of course, they expose you to paint on the marking of where you were hit. I looked like the rainbow bread boy. No padding. All I had was a helmet. And there was like bee stings just welling up all over your body. And this is no joke. This is what these guys do and gals do. So you advance until you can no longer advance. And you do nothing but push rounds out. So that motorcade can get out of there, limousine can get out of there. But what a training day. Paid for it the next day, but what a training day. And these are some of the things that we did. So a lot of role play in that course. But it was a great time. So after the sheriff's office, when I retired in January of 2013, I started to work part-time for Tittabawassee Township Police Department, part-time for Frankenmuth Police Department as a patrolman. Did I have an issue stepping down from a command position to a patrol position? What do you think? You think I did? Really? What I want to put in your mind is never, ever forget where you came from. I don't care how far up the ladder you go, never forget where you came from. Because when you do that and you act like that, you're showing everybody else that you're better than they are. And I can tell you right now, and this is why I dress down when I do these. I'm not any better than anybody in this room. I always maintained that level playing field with my people I supervised, and stepping into those roles as a patrol officer, I welcomed it. Because the day that you think you know it all, you better get up and walk out. This job is ever learning every day. So, don't ever forget where you came from. Your job as a supervisor is to supervise your people to make sure that they can achieve the goals they want to achieve, and of course to abide by your policies and procedures of your organization. Questions so far? Yes?
What were your goals when you first started?
In the sheriff's office?
Like when you first started everything out of high school and college?
Oh, out of college, jeez. I'm going to tell you. My first job I ever had was working in a bakery washing dishes for $5 an hour. I was 16 years old, and I always wanted to be a cop. So I've had numerous jobs, done numerous things. United Parcel Service. Everything I did, I tried to set a goal. United Parcel Service, I started as basically an unloader for trucks. And in a year's time, I was going to be bumped up to a supervisor. And I'm not boasting about myself, but these are goals that you need to establish. And you need good work ethics. And so I was 1976 when I was going to get promoted to a shift supervisor, and General Motors came up. So I went to work for General Motors. Gray iron. Foundry. At that time I was hired in as a broom sweeper for the #1 cleaning room. #1. That's where the 4 and 6 cylinder engine blocks were coming down the line. My job was to sweep the floors. Okay? When they had the major layoffs, see, I was hired in 76, and major layoffs, I was laid off right before 1980. I was a production line foreman. And was never recalled. So I still, again, wanted to be a cop. So I decided to enroll in classes, came out here, enrolled in CJ, and I made sure I had a backup plan. I also enrolled in plumbing and heating courses. I obtained a job working as an intern for plumbing and heating while I attended classes out here. Ultimately, I married young. We had our first child 2 years after we were married. Started to knuckle down and applied at numerous agencies for law enforcement. But back then, there was a big affirmative action push. Do we need diversity? Absolutely. No ifs, ands, or buts. But just saying you need diversity and not providing the academic monies needed is a travesty. So again, I had to wait till 1983 when I was accepted by the sheriff's office. At that time, I was working 4 jobs. I was a record driver. I worked for St. Mary's Security. God, there was two. Oh, armored car driver. Yeah, I know. I should have wrote the stuff down. But I had 4 part-time jobs trying to make ends meet for my family. And then I get hired into the sheriff's office part-time. So that was another part-time job added to that. How bad do you want it? That's why I can't emphasize this enough. If you want it bad enough, you're going to get it. I almost stayed at St. Mary's. I was offered a full-time job there in security, and it was a great place back then to work. I loved it, absolutely loved it. And I almost turned down the sheriff's office offer.
That's not taken.
So did that help on the question of my background, building up to? Don't ever give up on your desires. You know, it just may take longer to achieve, but don't ever give up on your desires. Again, how bad do you want it? A lot of sacrifices were made. You know, I've been divorced because of my career choice. You have to have family support. How many are currently married in here right now? Just yourself?
Yeah, so,
So what's your spouse feel about this?
she's okay with it. I mean, she knows a lot of work, just tiring, but she's with me.
Okay. That's important. Family support is invaluable. There were so many times I would come home, clam up, and not talk to my spouse. That's a lot of baggage. And my career almost ended September 3rd, 1995 at 12:18 a.m.
What year was it?
1993. Did I say 95? I'm sorry, it's 95. 95. Again, I should have wrote the stuff down. You're right, Michelle. I was working a seatbelt grant for the sheriff's office. And part of the seatbelt grant was if you saw seatbelts not being worn, you'd stop the car, pull it over, decide if you're going to issue citations. We still had discretion, even on the grant. But, you know, we were paid overtime monies to work this detail. I was a sergeant. And pretty much passenger bailed out when I went to stop the car. Passenger had something in their arms as they were running. And the driver of the vehicle slowly pulled off and went down a street on the east side of Saginaw City. What do you do? What's that? Okay. I respect what you're saying. This is why I'm asking. See, this is the interaction part. This is what I got to hear from you. Yes?
Get the license plate of the car if you can, and then go after the passenger like you said back there. That's what I would probably do.
Okay.
That way you can go after the driver later.
I'd call for backup because you want to know what the driver's doing. That's our main goal, is to figure out what the driver's doing, so call for backup and then when somebody's on the run,
Okay.
deal with the driver.
I'll probably call for backup because the person on foot is at a slower pace and is in the area. All the drivers can just flee off and risk more people.
Okay. Go ahead.
Usually what they say is if you're the lone officer, focus on the car and don't leave the driver alone. So if somebody runs off, you want to focus on the car more than the runner, because you can get information from the driver and he's, you know, ultimately closer. If you're right next to your BB, you can hop in and go after him, get back up.
Bingo. You're going to learn this. And, you know, I cannot speak highly enough about Delta's Police Academy. They've got some of the best instructors you will ever find that are part of this police academy here. If you get an opportunity and you're going to pursue a law enforcement career here, I can't emphasize that enough to you. But you're absolutely correct. Why not pursue the guy on foot? Give me some examples why. Is it okay if I go?
Yeah.
Okay. Give me some examples why. Yes, sir.
He could disappear, he or she could disappear, or they could drop whatever they were holding on to, so it's harder to charge them with anything.
The biggest thing is, I indicated they were holding something. What if it was a weapon? You know, you never pursue somebody on foot by yourself if you can avoid it. You know, if they spin around and produce a weapon, what are your chances? So I stayed with the car. Radioed out description of the individual running, direction, travel, and I pursued the car. Very low speeds. All of a sudden, the speeds kicked up to 60 plus miles an hour through the city of Saginaw. Too fast. I terminated. Our policies and procedures allow us as a police officer to determine whether or not we feel the pursuit is necessary and whether or not we feel that it may cause a safety issue for the residents in a populated area. I terminated. Vehicle continued on, approximately 4 blocks ahead of me. All I saw was debris, an explosion. Vehicle side impacted another vehicle, T-boned him right through an intersection. As a result, I contacted Central Dispatch. I said, I believe they've crashed. They said, are there injuries? I said, I don't know. I'm not on scene. Let me get on scene. I get on scene, and the vehicle had 3 children and 2 female adults in it. So I tried to render aid. The vehicle was actually pushed into a house on the corner. And the suspect vehicle was approximately half block down the road, all smashed up. The whole front end was gone. No suspect. So as a result of that crash, the 2 adult females lost their life, and I literally felt the pulse of a 14-month-old child disappear. And I don't remember a whole bunch after that because they said I went into shock, and I was quitting my job. I was done. They called in a chaplain, tried to get me to talk. I couldn't talk. They ended up taking me home. And I remember sitting in a lazy boy in my living room in the middle of the night, and close to 8 a.m. that next morning, which would have been Sunday morning, I packed up all my sheriff department stuff and was going down to the department to quit. I was done. Because I blamed myself for this. Now, the most intriguing part about this is a state trooper talked to me afterwards that showed up on the scene. Gary Thomas, never will forget him. Just a fantastic friend of mine. And he said, Guts, I tried to talk to you, but I looked in your eyes, there was nobody there. And he said, the bad guy was going to kill you. Outside the door of his vehicle, when he bailed out to take off running, he dropped his .38 revolver with the hammer back. Dropped it on the ground. He said, this guy was going to kill you. The only thing that saved my job was my sheriff at the time, that was Tom McIntyre, intercepted me when I was taking my equipment down to the sheriff's office and said, you get an appointment with a psychologist today. And I was in to see a psychologist for 2 weeks. And that's the only thing that saved my career. And the reason I bring this up is this is part of the baggage that you're going to take home. You need to speak to your loved one, your families, when things are on your mind. I have lost 2 friends that I have worked with in my career to suicide. They put the guns right to their heads and pulled the triggers. We all knew they were having problems. As a manager and supervisor, if I detected any of my staff were displaying any type of emotional issues, whether it be personal issues or whether it be department related, I ordered them to see somebody from employee assistance. You know, because I didn't want to lose another one. A lot of baggage. This also goes into the corrections realm as well. You're going to see things, you're going to smell things that you wouldn't think anybody would have to endure or go through. You got to talk about this. You need to find something to occupy your downtime. This is where I'm having my biggest problem right now. You know, even though I'm on the board of directors for a credit union, I'm on the board of directors for the Women's Center in Bay County. I teach all across the state of Michigan. I consult. It's driving me crazy. Yes?
How did you like control your emotions during those tragic events other than going to a psychologist? Like how did you keep your...
Boy, that's a great question. How do you control your emotions? I do not and never wanted to have an employee that was motionless. I mean emotionless. I didn't express anything. I would prefer you to break down at a scene. Once you lose your heart and compassion, to me that's a problem. Now, do you get to a point where you can accept some things that you're going to see and do? Yes. How do you deal with that? I have pulled over to the side of the road after the scene, when I've left the scene, and I've bawled my eyes out. Don't ever be afraid to shed or show your emotions.
So you have like a mental health issue that's like certified by a doctor, like you do have bipolar disorder or stuff like that. How do you go with dealing with stuff like that as a chief? Or like if one of your officers are like having an issue?
The biggest thing is, do you have medications to control the situation?
Right.
Okay? And that's what we look at. And we're not the determining factor on whether or not we can hire you based on that condition. A doctor makes the recommendation to us whether or not you're fit for duty.
Do you make them go for regular checkups?
No, the only time I do anything like that is when I sense that there's emotional issues or depression. Depression is huge. You know, and I can feel myself slipping into that once in a while. And what you got to do is you got to occupy yourself when you're downtime. You know, a lot of agencies now are working 12-hour shifts. So it gives you a lot of downtime. So what do? I mean, I had some officers that picked up secondary jobs just to keep occupied. But I can't emphasize enough to you that your physical fitness is huge. You know, run, bike, walk, go to the gym on a regular basis, swim. That's going to help reduce a lot of your stress. You know, I was an avid runner. You know, I can't anymore because my knees are shot. So I bike. You know, I love the participating in a Zootamac every year. That's a 51-mile bike ride from Boyne to Mackinac City. It's a gorgeous ride. It's a brutal ride, but it's gorgeous. I'm training for it right now. It's coming up in May. You know, so I got an exercise bike at home, and I'm on it every day, pushing myself. Exercise to relieve the stress is one of the biggest factors that I can emphasize to you. But what do you think? I've been shot at twice in my career. I've never had to return fire. So I've been very, very blessed and fortunate. Never had to take a life. Seen a lot of lives lost. Picked up a lot of body parts. What do you think was my biggest... I should bring this up, you know, because you brought up a really good point. I had an incident one time where I had a young man that was killed in a car crash. It was on 83 that goes into Frankenmuth. Car was flipped upside down, and this was the deceased individual. So here I am, first car on. This guy is still strapped into his seatbelt. It's got a 40-ouncer right there that was in the console, and it was opened, so there's beer everywhere. And he's dead. Half his face is ripped right off. You know, my job is to make identification, and then deliver a death message. This was one of the hardest ones that I can remember, and to this day, it bothers me. But normally we have pastors on call that will go with us to deliver these type of death messages. Well, the pastor that I had that night, that was his first notification. So it was during Christmas that year, and I found an ID, but with this man's face half ripped off, I couldn't positively identify him as that being that person in an ID. So we went to the address in Birch Run, and we pulled up, Christmas lights all lit up, you know, house looked gorgeous, ready for Christmas, the whole 9 yards. Made contact with a female adult at the residence. Walked into the residence, I saw a family portrait on the wall, and I went, oh, that's my guy. Christmas tree, I mean, just gorgeous. And so we told her, I've never had this happen before. She went speechless, left the room, came out with a 4- and 6-year-old, both boys, sat them on the couch, got right in my face and said, you tell my kids why their daddy's not coming home. Yep. And then she left. How many in here think they can do that? That's part of this job. Needless to say, once we were done, the pastor and I walked outside. He was in tears. He said, I'm done. I can't do this. And he left me. So I was with that family for 4 hours that night, trying to console, and I ended up taking them to their parents' house, her parents' house in Grand Blanc, and then I had my time to deal with this. You know, I'm going to be honest, I think the world of each and every one of you in here for wanting to do this job, corrections and law enforcement. If you proceed to go through criminal justice, I admire you. But I'm a person that gives it to you straight like it is. And that's why, if you need help, advice, counsel, to help you get your career goal and achieve what you want to achieve, email me or call me. This is free advice I can help you with. Whether or not you want to find out if you're going in front of an oral board what to expect, I'll tell you. My goal is to help you achieve what you want to achieve. My oldest son is a cop. He works for Tittabawassee Township Police Department. I tried to talk him out of it. He's 40 years old. But once he got that bug, he couldn't stop. He had to go. And I'm very, very proud of my son for what he's done and what he's accomplished. What do you think, you know, when I first started as a patrolman, I weighed 138 pounds. I couldn't fit everything on my belt because my waist wasn't big enough. What do you think is the most valuable tool that I had to keep me from getting my butt kicked on a regular basis?
Radio.
What's that?
Radio.
A radio? Yeah, you can't outrun that Motorola. What do you think? Come on.
The way you talk, like conversation with the person.
Communication, absolutely. Absolutely. For those that have trouble communicating, take a class, please. That is the most valuable tool that you can have aside from this great big gun, this great big taser, pepper spray, is your communication skills. You can talk your way out of anything if you give the person an opportunity. I'm old school cop. You know, back in the days when I first started, we used to carry SAP gloves and SAPs with us. And you said boo-hoo to us, you're going down. Today's policing has changed. You no longer do that. And these are some of the things I teach. My expertise is what they call excited delirium, in custody deaths, how to avoid dealing with somebody that's going through a mental health crisis, drug abuse, substance abuse, whether it be alcohol or mental illness, and how to better deal with these individuals rather than gang pile and loss of life. That's what I do now. I'm all over the state doing this. We have to step back, take a breath, formulate a plan, and then deal with the situation. Instead of just reaching out, grabbing hold of, and taking down and gang piling to cuff up. It's a whole different philosophy nowadays. So I admire each and every one of you that want to be a law enforcement officer. It's a very, very tough goal to achieve right now. And maintain your professionalism, and in a lot of cases, your job. Officers are being dismissed over these types of cases, criminally charged or civilly sought after. So very, very tough. And corrections, like I say, I loved it when I was a corrections officer. Just because they're residents of a jail does not mean that they're second-class citizens. Treat them with respect, and that's how you earn that respect. Uniform alone does not give you respect. You have to earn every day. Yes?
In your personal opinion, do you think nowadays it's more violent than it was back then?
Do I think it's more violent nowadays? Yes. I'm concerned about my son each and every day, and a lot of it is because of officers being killed on a regular basis. I came very close a few times to losing my life. In most cases, it was because I did something outside of my training. You know, remember when I told you don't pursue somebody on your own? I was a runner. You know, my first year in the streets, I caught 12 of 14 that took off running from me. So, it's a bad place. You know, think of your safety before you think about catching a bad guy. My goal was to catch the bad guy. I used to get chewed out on a regular basis by my sergeants, my corporals, central dispatch, because I was always yelling, I got one on foot. You know, your safety is number one. I can say that now because I look back and I'm thinking, well, that was a stupid thing to do. Nowadays, there's so much loss of life and officers out there working the streets. You know, it's a trophy for them, especially if they're incarcerated after killing a police officer. They go to the prison system and they're, you know, they got this trophy on the wall there when they first step in. So, you know, I can't emphasize enough. It's a very dangerous profession, not just the streets, but also a corrections field as well. You know, you're dealing with so much mental illness out there right now. A lot of it is due to the opioid epidemic. It's causing us all kinds of problems. I got enormous amount of videos that I showed during my presentation of officers, 6, 7, 8, 9 officers trying to take one person down, fighting. The problem is, who's got those resources? You know, back when I started with the sheriff's office, we had 8 cars per shift. Now, you're lucky to have 3. City of Saginaw had 262 officers. Now I think they're down to 48. So, how do you deal with this? Yeah, it's a concern. And I can tell you all facets of law enforcement and corrections right now are hiring. You know, keep your education, try to get your bachelor's degree, because that's what's going to help elevate you to promote yourself up to that level and achieve your goals. So with a bachelor's. I didn't. I have no excuse. I wish I did, but I don't. Michelle's been on me on a regular basis about that. Yes.
Did you ever work in like a juvenile detention or anything?
Juvenile detention. No. But I can tell you, juveniles have a lot more rights during incarceration than adults. And I'll use Saginaw County detention as an example. They called us. I started a corrections emergency response team at Saginaw County Jail back in the early 90s.
It's called CERT, right? It's
Correct.
Like the SWAT team for the jail.
To deal with those that were expressing behavioral issues. And I used to have officers that, you know, they pumped iron on a regular basis, their arms are this big, and they feel they can just break the door and go in there and deal with the situation on their own. Well, I had to put a stop to that, because next thing you know, I'm getting officers hurt, they're out on comp, now I got to backfill positions, now I got to go see them in the hospital, not that I minded that, don't get me wrong. But, so I started a corrections emergency response team that could assemble within 10 minutes and be ready to go. And they would take care of the situation. They go in as a team, they work as a team, they practice on takedown cuffing techniques, they use shields just to protect my staff. It cost me a little over $30,000 to equip an 8-person team. Where did I get the money? I found the money. So one day, juvenile home contacted me and said, we got a problem. I said, what's the problem? Well, I got 3 of my detention officers in the hospital right now because of a 16-year-old that beat all 3 of them up. I said, okay. Well, we need them taken to your facility. I said, well, number one, I can't house a juvenile. You know that. It's against federal law. Well, the judge says you will take. And I'm not kidding you. I was threatened with contempt of court. Juveniles have to be kept sight and sound away from adults. You will learn all this as you progress. So, I was ordered by the judge to come get this 16-year-old. I says, I'll bring my CERT team in. Are they going to have weapons? Yeah. Well, we don't allow those in here. Then you're not getting my help. You never, ever go into a situation and lose the ability to protect yourself by frivolous rules such as that. You're not trained that way. So I said, my staff either comes in fully equipped or you deal with your own problem. And my staff had pepper ball guns, pepper spray, tasers, regular sidearms, stab vests, the whole 9 yards. Yes, go ahead.
What year was it that you created it?
It had to be, it was about 94. No, wait, I take that back. 2004, because it's 2001 I was promoted. I'm sorry, I'm getting old.
You get lost in the sands of time.
You do. 2004. And so my team pulls up on scene. I'm with my team. They get out of the van. They start putting on all their equipment. Of course, all the young faces are pressed right up against the windows watching my team assemble. So the head of the detention facility comes out and says, oh, are you kidding me? And I went, what? I can't allow all that equipment in here. And I went, pack up, let's go. He says, you're serious? I said, I'm telling you, you either turn your facility over to me right now and let me do my thing, or we leave. Well, you know, you really can't cause a disturbance. I said, what did I just tell you? Let my team do their thing. We'll resolve this. Nobody will get hurt. And we're out of here. So he finally agreed. My team suited up. They did a march cadence. Everybody know what a march cadence is? They're stomping their feet as they're going through the hall, and it just echoed throughout. This 16-year-old, and this kid was big. He was probably 6'6", 240, 250, solid as a brick. And he saw that. My sergeant walked up to the window in his little cell area and pretty much gave him instructions. This kid, he went down to the ground, put his arms out. He was not going to mess with those people. And we resolved it. Just like that. And I got a call about a week and a half later from the detention supervisor and said, we got to have you guys out here more often because this place has never been this quiet. So, you know, it all goes back to communication. We didn't have to use force. We were ready to if we needed to, but communication's a big thing. And it was pretty much spelled out to this young man what was going to happen if he failed to comply with any directives. You know, we gave him an opportunity. If he didn't want to follow that opportunity, then we were going to have to do what we had to do. But, you know, you got to step aside. You got to take your time on dealing with these situations. And sometimes you can't. The time is not there to deal with this. Sometimes you have to act immediately. You don't have a choice. But they make that choice. But it's a tough profession right now. It really is. How much more time do we got, Michelle?
125.
25 minutes. Okay. That's me in a nutshell. I mean, I was solicited to become a chief of police in the city of Essexville. I forgot to mention that. And that was June of, that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I was hesitant because I was really enjoying my time working part-time in Frankenmuth and part-time for Tittabawassee. I love to work the streets. You know, because I love working with people, talking to people. And Frankenmuth, with all those festivals and everything they got going on out there, they would average over 200,000 just for their car show. All over the world, they'd come in for that. But I accepted the position. I made changes immediately when I got into Essexville. I made a detective's position, so the road officers wouldn't have to tie up time on follow-up. They went to 12-hour shifts instead of 8s. And rewrote 53 policies. Some of their policies were dated back to 1998. And those policies have to be reviewed and updated yearly. And it was very tedious, but you know, it is what it is. And you know, then I was retired out on July 1st of last year. So chief's position, basically you're a department head. You don't get to go out and work the streets like you used to. Sometimes it's a violation of labor if you do. But they had a public safety, so I was in charge of fire, police, and they had a medical training as well. So some of you may be looking at an agency that is called public safety, which means you do all three facets. I just explained to you what the stress was being a police officer. Can you imagine what it is as being fire and medical as well? It's not that I'm against public safety, but you have to have the right mindset to step into that world because the training is nonstop, plus your regular duties. It's a tough, tough, tough job. You know, and I was a fireman way back in the mid-'70s for Buena Vista Fire Department as a volunteer fireman. And yeah, you get to see some real bad things doing that as well. But I did that for 2 years. And I mean, I was a senior in high school when I first started there. Some of those sites you're not ready for. But you learn quick. Like I say, I've done a lot, been very blessed. And so that's me in a nutshell. My management style is I don't micromanage. I expect my staff to know their jobs and do their jobs. And again, I'm informal. You know, Guts is my nickname, and unless we were in official attendance by city council or the city manager, the guys would call me Guts, and gals would call me Guts. That's it. I never wore all the brass and everything like that. I wore a polo shirt with the Essexville insignia, and it said Chief here. And I wore khakis. I was more approachable to the public that way. But that's me. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's me. And I'm big on community. Very transparent. Yes?
One thing I wondered if you would share with the class, you mentioned the CERT team before.
Yes.
Tell them a little bit about what the CERT team is, what you have to do to join it, and some of the competitions that you guys won when you were in charge.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. I paid dearly for one of those competitions.
A lot of students don't realize there are a lot of really exciting things that you can do in corrections.
God, yes. But like I say, I go along all over the state of Michigan to put on classes, and I get to talk to a lot of the jail administrators and the sheriffs. And as a jail administrator, you have to be inventive with your staff. You have to give your staff an opportunity. And when I first came up with this idea at the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office, my sheriff thought I was nuts. I said, no. I said, this is the reason why. We need to stop these assaults on officers. We formulate this team. It helps with that aspect of it. I don't lose these officers on workman's comp for getting injured. But we had a physical fitness criteria that you had to pass. And it's similar to the one that MCOLS has to get into law enforcement or corrections. You have to pass this MCOLS standard. We didn't do a written, but we did a physical. And any physical that we did as part of the criteria, I did. Push-ups, sit-ups, running 1.5 miles in a certain amount of time based on your age and weight. I participated in each and every one. And I used to tell them, if the old guy can do it, you can do it. So the standards were high. And I could not believe, nor could my sheriff believe, the amount of interest when I first posted for those positions. And we set the budget up for an 8-person team. Didn't matter if you were male, female, didn't matter if you were overweight, you were allowed to compete for those positions. And we gave you time to get ready. I think there was like a 6-month window to get ready and get prepared for this. Because you had to take it serious. There was incentive pay to be on this team, and I had special pins to recognize what they did. They could wear in their uniform every day to recognize that they are part of CERT. And I equipped them with the best equipment that was on the market. I mean, I did not shortchange anything in regards to that. Yes, sir.
How many times was CERT used?
Oh, God. We trained in our own house. And anytime we did training in our own house, what do you think happened with the residents of the jail? Damn, here they come. They didn't know if it was going to be an active or if it was training. And that's what you want. But they trained twice a month in the jail, probably called and utilized on average once or twice a month. Once the word got out, everybody kept it pretty cool.
Did you have to go to all across the state and stuff like that, or was it just usually from here?
Just at Saginaw County Sheriff's Office. Now, we did such a great job that we were asked to come in and train other agencies. But the best experience, and Michelle brought this up, the best experience that we got was Moundsville, the mock prison riot training that they do in Moundsville, Pennsylvania. you ever get an opportunity, it is the most realistic, punch them up online. Mock prison riot. They will show you videos, scenarios that they do, and it is the most realistic training that you will ever be involved in. One of the things I had my guys and gals use for training was what they called a shock knife. Anybody familiar with a shock knife? You all know what a taser is, don't you? Well, let me tell you. Shock knife is it's indescribable. It's a big red knife. You hit a button, and all across the blade is an arc. An electric arc. So when we first got this, because I tried to do the most realistic training we could for my staff. Was it painful at times? Yes. Would you do it again after you got zapped? No. And that's what I tried to instill upon my staff. When we first got this shock knife, I had my team in, we were going over safety protocols and everything else, and I went to a trainer's course in it, and I asked for a volunteer to step up to try it. Who do you think tried it?
The biggest dude.
That's what I do. So I took that knife and I went on the inside of my leg with it. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm looking for my leg because I figured I cut that bad boy right off. That's how realistic this was. I mean, it literally felt like I sliced my leg wide open. I never did it again. You know, but I showed my staff it was safe and it's a teaching tool. So anyways, we go to Moundsville. I went with my team 3 years straight. And we're in this great big scenario. In other words, my team has to perform what they do in front of a huge audience. And they're judged by a certain amount of judges on their performance. And it's a riot in a dorm at the facility. And it's students from the local universities that come in and portray the bad guys and gals. So the riot's going on. I wanted the shock knife introduced as a shank. Nobody would touch it. So guess who? I put on a pair of orange coveralls and I played the bad guy. So my team had come in with their march cadence. I'm in this open room. I'm yelling, screaming, the whole 9 yards. I got this knife shoved in a little spot in my back. They come in, they line up, and they're doing their advancing with the shields up. They had the pepper ball guns in the back, the two officers with the pepper ball guns. So they're getting close, getting close. I produce the shank. I attack the line. I try to jump over the shields. They shield me, pushed me off. All I felt was pepper balls.
Didn't you used to have a video of that?
Yes. I'm not protected. All I have on is a pair of coveralls. Okay, and the rule was no groin shots. But I got caught by one. And it was a female officer that shot me. So I'm on the ground, I jump up, I run into a cell. Because now they're going to have to try to get me out of that cell, knowing that I have a shank. They got me out of the cell. And they come in with shields, plastered me against the wall. And, you know, this is no 50% force, 25% force. This is full force. Because I didn't want them to shortchange anything. And so they finally get me in custody, and then they go to march me out, and we had a standing ovation over that. My guys and gals did such a fantastic job. Once we got outside, I did something I don't ever recommend anybody to do, but I was hurting so bad, I dropped my drawers right out there. And you would not believe how bad I swelled up. And the female officer that shot me, she come up, she went, "Oh my God!" Was it worth it? Absolutely.
That was Austin, wasn't it?
It was. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I had marks all over my body from the pepper ball guns. But, you know, again, as an administrator, you cannot be afraid to participate with your people. Just because I had to work out of an office doesn't mean I still can't go out and enjoy the time with my staff. And I'm there to set an example. And again, I'm there to help them exceed and meet their goals on what they want to do. And part of that is participating in their career and helping them achieve that. You know, one of the things when I do my interviews is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? If you've made that decision that you want to end your career as a corrections officer or a patrolman, I respect that. But again, I look for leaders. And that's what any agency will look for. Don't shortchange your abilities. Don't think you can't until you try. Yes, sir.
Because you were an administrator and all that stuff, how often did you go out and like was patrolling at all, if you did it all?
Well, you know, I had to watch it because there's you know, contract labor is, you know, if you can't go out and fill a position, you have to offer it up at overtime first, and if nobody takes it, then you can go out. But I was assigned a patrol car to take home. I was always in trouble. I could not go home without making a traffic stop, without getting involved in a pursuit, without making an arrest. It just never failed. I went home for lunch one time and was going home to lunch and had this young driver blow a stoplight right in front of me. And I got a marked patrol unit and the guy next to me is going like... So I spun around to make the traffic stop. He took off. Next thing you know, I'm in a pursuit. And I'm the only car that's available to do this. And I'm driving through the city, not at high rates of speed, otherwise I'd have terminated, but the dude finally pulled up at Malzahn and Brockway and bailed out and took off running. There's 2 other people in the car. Next thing you know, I got a district court judge that pulls up next to me as I got these 2 people in the car at gunpoint. Bill, do you want me to take off running after that guy that ran? No, Judge, just... Well, what can I do to help you? Judge, just drive away. I don't know if there's guns in the car, and I'm still on point. And she's talking to me. God bless her, don't get me wrong. I mean, she really wanted to help, but I could just see the headlines, you know, patrolman gets off, judge killed. You know, God bless her, but I was a little busy. But I stayed with the 2. My backup finally showed up, which was my undersheriff at that time. And I get the 2 in custody. And we found out who the driver was later. It was a 16-year-old kid, didn't have a license. And we ended up getting warrants for him. But just trying to go home for lunch. You know, and I used to drive my sheriff and undersheriff nuts with the stuff I got involved in. It just happened to fall into my lap every time I went out. Like I say, I've been blessed. There's numerous times that I should not be here today. I had a woman that leveled a shotgun on me. All I was doing was going to the house to check on her well-being. Nobody had seen her for 4 days out in Chesaning. So I was sent out there to check on her. Her mail was piled up. So she was elderly, so people thought that she may have died inside the house. I get there, and all I could smell was kerosene coming from the house. I had a Chesaning officer backing me up, and told my sergeant, I said, I was a deputy, I said, I get no response. He said, well, you need to get in. And I said, are you advising me I need to break to get in? He says, absolutely. So I start kicking on his door. And I hear china dishes falling off the, and I'm thinking, what in the world? Well, she's got this big china cabinet against the door that I was kicking. So it took me about 4 kicks, and I finally kick it down. China cabinet goes flying, door goes flying. This woman steps out with a shotgun and says, "What are you doing to my house?" And I went, "Ugh." I froze. The chesting officer jumped off the porch, went behind a tree, and he's yelling, "Don't shoot him, he's a cop, don't shoot." I couldn't say a word. Froze. All she had to do was pull the trigger. I was done. And I mean, 5, 6 feet away, I was done. I was so shook up after that I had to go home. Yep. That's one case I should have been dusted.
When you would like do all the stuff that you shouldn't be doing, did your like sheriff and undersheriff ever threaten to fire you?
No. With all the crazy stuff that I did, the question was, with all the crazy stuff that I did, was I ever disciplined or threatened to be terminated? No. I had one discipline in my entire career with the sheriff's office. And that was 6 months after I hit the streets in 1989. I was involved in a car crash. It was not my fault. State police indicated it was not my fault on the crash report, but my sheriff at that time, who was Jim Kelly, said, "I don't care what the state trooper said, you were in control of that vehicle and it's evident you did not have control, so therefore you're getting a letter." So I was issued a letter of reprimand. Was I upset? Absolutely. Did it make sense what he said? Absolutely.
How many times did you have to go to court for a case for like all the purposes for like the attorney to question you and all that stuff?
Oh my.
Cases and criminal cases?
Oh geez. I was considered an expert witness in drunk driving cases. That's through all my training, and throughout my career with the sheriff's office, 6 times I was almost taken out head on by drunk drivers. And one case, I was forced into a ditch to avoid this guy. He stopped after he realized I was in the ditch. Bless you. Drunk. I mean, just blasted. So I'm arresting, or I'm performing field sobriety tests on this guy. Another vehicle pulls up. Woman gets out, comes up, and said, "That dude is trashed. I was just at the bar with him." And I looked at her and I went, "You been drinking?" "Well, yeah, I've had a few." So I got a double header. So with all the drunk driving arrests that I'd made, and I think one year I had 136, which is quite a bit for a county. We just had an enormous amount of territory to travel, 810 square miles for Saginaw County. I became an expert witness for the operation of the breathalyzer. So I would average 68 to 75 subpoenas a month. Now that doesn't mean I had to go into court on each and every one, but I had to make myself available. And there was numerous jury trials I had to testify in into the procedures that I did to prepare the instrument and make sure the instrument was calibrated correctly and everything of that nature. I have been to court, it's crazy the amount of times. But I tell you, civil court, I have never been sued so many times in my entire career than when I ran the jail.
What were they trying to get you for?
Food's too cold, inadequate clothing, we wanted newer clothes, abusive language, assaultive behavior, on and on and on and on and on. Saginaw County had one of the biggest lawsuits, class action suit. In 2001, when I took the helm of the jail, I was at the FBI academy at the same time, but a strip search lawsuit. If you look up or research Rose versus Saginaw County, you could read through that lawsuit. And our procedure at that point in time, now keep in mind, I had just taken over the helm of the jail, was that if you went into admin seg, your clothing had to be removed and you were given a paper gown because they had somebody commit suicide with their own clothing in admin seg. Admin seg is isolation. It's a behavioral type of cell. The inmates referred to it as the hole. And you were checked on every 15 minutes by an officer, and this one individual hung himself with his own clothes. So they enacted, prior to my taking over the jail, the policy that anybody that goes in is stripped and are given a paper gown. Well, this woman sued, Rose did, and it evolved into a class action, and I had to spend a whole week at federal court testifying with 4 individuals that went on to federal court with this case, but I had to drive back and forth to Detroit every day. So a lot of court. And that's another negative aspect of law enforcement and corrections is, you have to be ready, and any report that you write, you may end up in court, whether it be civil or criminal court. So it was a great question. A lot of time in court. It could interfere with personal plans, vacations, and this is why you have to have your family on board with this. They have to understand there's got to be some flexibility here, and it may be some cancellation of activities, birthday parties, Christmas, you name it. You may have to work. It's just the nature of the beast. So it's a big sacrifice to make. Anything else you want to ask? Now's your time to hit me up, because I'm going to tell you, you're just starting out. And if now's not the time, think about it later, then dime me up. Send me an email or anything of that nature. I'm more than happy to help you, yes.
Oh, so do you ever have like a hair code for like hair?
A lot of those, how do I put this? Used to, yes. But a lot of policies are being changed. Because the young man that went through the situation at school.
The dreadlocks.
Yeah, the dreadlocks. Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about for the wrestler?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
That's a prime example.
They forced him to cut his dreads.
Correct. We have to prove that it's going to be a detriment to your safety to force you, to cut your hair. Now, when you work public safety, you can't have this. And why you can't have this is because when you're wearing an air pack, that mask has to be sealed to fight fires. And if you have a beard, you can't. So that's a safety issue. So, we can force you to shave. But a lot of, like the current sheriff for Saginaw County, he allows beards in the jail. Hair, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they made any modifications, but, it's a violation of your rights. Seriously. Especially if it's a religious thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But always ask those questions, and I always tell everybody that if you're looking at applying at an organization, research the organization. Just don't fill out the application, submit it, expect a call, and when you get a call for an interview, now you're not ready. Do your homework. Do a background on the organization. I had a guy that sat across from me one time at an oral board for hiring. He quoted my whole career to me by memory. I looked at the other panelists and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? He told me things about myself I didn't even know. But that was a young man that was dedicated on getting this job. And he came out number 1. So, do your research on where you're applying to. There was one time I think I had over 70 applications across the nation submitted. I was ready to go anywhere to become a cop. Did I research everyone? Oh, no. No, yes.
Do you know the policy on tattoos?
A lot of ink is being allowed now.
So if it's a religious piece like this one here, Is that still allowed? Like, I don't have to cover.
I can't answer for the agency. Each agency is going to have their standards. And this is why I'm saying that you need to do your research on the agencies and call them up and ask them. Or talk to the officer. If you know an officer that works there, ask them. You know, don't be afraid to ask the questions, because this is your future career that you're looking at. Now's the time to know before you step into that, instead of afterwards. Otherwise, what you're going to do is you're going to puddle jump across other different agencies. And once you start to do that, an employer will look at your work history and think, ooh, is this a problem employee that they're bouncing around so much? Not that you are. But, you know, dedicate yourself into doing your research. You got nothing but time. You're young. Yes, you are. You're never too old. So, you know, it's something that you can do and take the time to do. There is no hurry. But strive for that bachelor's, you know, minimum for the bachelor's, especially if you want to excel wherever you're going to go. Because right now, that's pretty much a requirement. You know, Tittabawassee has hired a new police chief. They approached me and said, well, would you consider? And I said, well, what length of commitment are you looking for? And, well, a minimum of 10 years. I said, dude, man, I ain't going to work past 70. It ain't happening. But part of the requirement was a bachelor's degree. And when I told him, I said, I don't have a bachelor's degree. Well, your experience. Well, no, don't shortchange your standards for me because I don't have a degree. That's not fair. So, would I have liked the job? Oh, yes. But I'm happy with just being retired now. I got my Social Security coming in, so. And as long as I can still talk and do what I do with, you know, you as the younger group, looking into this and going across state and teaching, I'm fine. Yes, sir.
Have you ever thought about becoming a professor at Delta? Teaching criminal justice?
Michelle's been on me about that. I would have to go back to school. Not that I'm against that. But she's been after me for years. Do I have enough credits? I'd have to sit down and work with Delta to figure that out. But it's possible. I mean, and my wife has been on me about it too. You know, but and if I had an excuse to give it to you, but it wouldn't be fair because it's not true. I don't have an excuse. I wish I did, but I don't. So, communications course, if you're not good, especially speaking in front of people, because what if you get into an environment where they want you to be a community policing officer? Communication class is very important. I can't emphasize that enough. You know, back when I was going to school, I was afraid to get up in front of a class and do a book report. I would take a failing grade before I'd do a book report. So you can imagine how bad I was when I went to the FBI Academy and I got to stand in front of this, in this studio, this television studio going, are you kidding me? 10 weeks of that. That'll cure you real quick.
Guts, we sure appreciate you coming.
Oh God, no, I can't thank you enough. And again, don't hesitate. I'm more than happy to help you. You know, I've done this with numerous young adults that, you know, have been looking at a career in this, and we're here to help. So, take advantage, don't take advantage, it's on you. All I can do is offer.